Hi there, welcome back to the Relationships Rebuilt YouTube channel. I'm Jim McKenzie, and today I'm going to discuss a topic that many couples face, which is how to navigate midlife challenges and finding strategies for renewing your marriage, which may have got a bit stale. You may even be at the point of separation. In any event, if you're going through a difficult phase in your relationship, this is a perfect video for you. So to identify who will benefit most from what I'm going to talk about today, this is for those whose spouses have expressed discontent in the marriage. I'm not happy anymore. I don't love you. I'm considering leaving. And whether or not your spouse has actually left or has started making noises that really cause you some concern, I'm here to give you a bit of hope. Now, reviving a strained marriage during midlife challenges is demanding, but it is possible. And what I'm going to talk about is strategies that rebuild trust, communication, and reignite that spark in a relationship. I've done this countless times, and these strategies do work for you. Now, let's talk about first how to avoid getting into that situation, which I call the dispute diffusing system, and explore how it can help you navigate inevitable disagreements that happen in any marriage. So to delve into that, let's just explore what you shouldn't be doing so you don't have to worry about the separation in the first place. And that is to deal with big marital mistakes. These are things such as criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, even contempt, and that can escalate the smallest difficulty into a situation of marriage breakdown. If you're aware of whether or not you're making these mistakes, then you can avoid falling into that trap. So let's have a look at big marital mistake number one, which is initiating needless conflict. By that, I mean, not every situation where you have a disagreement is worth getting involved with. I've seen minute things like, daily vacuuming explode into a huge sort of almost separation situation because one party's not pulling their weight. Sometimes, you just have to let it go and know that person's having a bad day and then come back to it. So that's number one. Number two is begging and pleading. If you're going to be emotional, try not to do it in public. Okay, try and keep your emotional composure because that can cause a huge escalation in any situation. The embarrassment and then the pushback from the other party can actually make it into something which it needn't have been if you just take a pause. Now, if you feel that things are going sideways in your marriage, the worst thing you can do, and this is mistake number three, is to make a drastic life change. If you're sort of an uncommunicative, unneedy type of person, then if you suddenly become super needy about everything, you're going to find that your spouse is going to think, hang on, something's up here. It can cause things to unravel quicker than you think. You can't change you overnight, and you definitely can't change you overnight in the context of a relationship where you're both needed. So try and work on keeping some normality in how you move and make little minute steps. Something I teach to my clients all the time, how to make those little changes in your behavior, which can improve your relationship. Okay, mistake number four is nagging. It kind of leads in from what I've spoken about before. Instead of focusing totally on what they're not doing right, focus on what you can do better. Be independent of that. If you work on you, then you create that inevitable backdraft where your spouse will just basically think, hang on, I've seen some changes here. And once they see that change, most will follow if they still want to, work on improving your marriage. And biggest mistake number five, which is a pretty obvious, which is just don't be negative about everything. It's difficult, but if you're sounding off constantly, you become what you complain of. Try and think of the positives, why you married that person or chose to have that relationship with them in the first place, and focus on that before you go to that dark place. So those big marital mistakes of criticism, defensiveness, stonewalling, contempt, if you're aware of them, then you can avoid falling into the trap. Now, okay, in any midlife marriage that's in crisis, there's inevitably a dispute. It can be about money, it can be about intimacy, it can be about showing up and being present, work-life balance gets thrown, any number of reasons for disputes. And I do have a strategy that I call the dispute diffusing system. And I'm going to give you a few examples how to deploy them in your relationship. The first one is active listening. This means fully focusing, eye contact, eye to eye, with your spouse when they're talking. Keep that eye contact and give them verbal cues that you're actually interested and that you're engaged. There is nothing worse than someone not feeling seen. You may have this with your children. And the responses to that is to show that you actually have heard it. So try repeating or summarizing what they've said to you before you respond. So they've said, I'm just so tired of always doing all the housework. Your initial response will be, okay, I hear then that you're really upset because you feel that you are doing all the housework. Okay, can we discuss how we can better divide those tasks up? That is active listening. Really, it's a big one. If someone is not feeling seen and heard, then that is a real red flag. Tactic number 2 to diffuse disputes is using I statements. Okay, if someone's always late, don't say, "Look, you're always late. You don't consider how that makes me feel." They're going to be defensive. Instead, use an I statement like, "Okay, look, when you're late, it really makes me feel anxious, and it really mean the world to me if you could just make sure you can turn up a few minutes early." You convey your emotions that way without apportioning blame, which is, again, going to only create defensiveness. So if you create that as it's your issue and you're explaining why, great diffusing tactic. Compromise, tactic 3. It's a win-win situation. Find middle ground through compromise. So even if you may disagree on where you want to go and eat, try and come up with something constructive, a constructive suggestion where they would enjoy themselves too, and explain why. Makes a big difference. You're seen to be reasonable, and they feel, again, seen and heard. And again, remember those 2 words, see and hear. Tactic number 4, a timeout. Now, if something is really blown up, emotions are running high, you've got to recognize that sometimes you have to just stop, pause, and pivot. Stop, pause, and pivot. And that means taking a time out, the same as if you're dealing with an angry child, but you are the angry child in that moment. So if an argument has become too intense and you're overwhelmed or you're just flooded, it's okay to step away. But make sure that you communicate to your spouse why you are stepping away. Okay, don't just leave the room. Just say, "Listen, I'm just feeling like I can't get my words out properly. I need to just compose myself, maybe write something down, and can we come back to it in 10 minutes or half an hour or whatever time you need." But make sure that you give them a chance as well to understand why. This allows both parties to come back with a clearer head, more productive communication, and perhaps a way to resolve whatever the problem is. Okay, so we've gone through how to deal with conflict, and we've also dealt with those things that can cause a marriage to deteriorate, especially after a longer relationship. But now, dealing with the S word, and by that I mean separation. Your husband or your wife turns around and says, "I want to separate. I've had enough. I'm tired of all this conflict. I'm tired of the disagreements." And when that happens, there are a number of emotions, and really you can't act rationally. So you have to really follow these steps to preserve your connection with the spouse who you feel you're losing. Okay, you maybe feel you're more engaged in a marriage than they are. You want to save it. You've got to really disassociate yourself with that and really think about the 50% of the marriage which you are responsible for and how to make that better. Because by doing that, you'll make yourself better. And if they see that change, then they're more inclined to think, okay, maybe I should just stop before I jump. Now, these steps are what I call the empowering steps to preserve your connection. And step 1 is do not panic. Keep your composure. It's easier said than done. There's an urge to panic. There's an urge to lash out. You need to really just, at this point, you need to really take care of yourself. If that means, you make sure that you do that exercise, you eat right, the separation is going to be in your head day and night, and it will drive you crazy. But you need to create a space for constructive dialogue in this. And the only way you can do that is by building your own mental resilience. And physical resilience is important too, because if you allow your health to suffer, you keep drinking too much, you comfort eat, chemically your body will be less able to deal with the stress. So start with the body if you can't deal with the mind, because once you settle that down, and again, these are routines that I teach as well, before I even get into any sort of this is what you need to do to solve the problem, because the problem is going to be yours. It's going to be internal, it's going to be physical, it's going to be mental and emotional. So that's the first step you need to take. Keep your composure, and to do that, look after yourself. Step two, you're going to need to buy some time. And by doing that, that means you need to take a step back. You have to realize that they may not give you any response at all to anything that you feel has caused a problem, why they want to leave, even if they've caused a problem. There's no way around that. You cannot change them in that moment. And the more emotional and charged that you are, then the less they're likely to exercise sound judgment. So, if you need to, talk to a trusted advisor or consult a professional like me or someone else in order to just come to terms with how you're feeling, that's the first real step that you will have in really looking for a solution. You can't do it if your head is messed up. Okay, so step one was a physical and mental, and step two is really just expressing understanding and willingness to deal with your own issues, right, by staying calm. And leading on from that, and step three, this is a controversial one. It's actually understanding why your spouse wants to leave. You have no option really if you want to save the relationship, but to hear them out. You can shout and scream at them, you will not get to the reason. It's really, really difficult, I'm not going to lie, and you're going to need support to do it. But if you do it, you'll create more empathy and understanding. And if you really feel that this person who you fell in love with and invested so much of yourself in is worth it, then you just need to communicate with them and say, listen, I'm committed. I think we can change. I think we need to have a more constructive dialogue, and I give you time to think about it. That may be all well and fine if someone's having an affair, but the emotional person may not have left the building. And that's their 50% of their investment in you that they're going to have to negotiate. So again, just try and be attentive, try and understand, and do your venting privately. Okay, don't do it to their face. Don't do it where they're going to hear it behind their back. All right, and that leads into step four, which is just basically giving them space. Don't beg. Don't try and find out where they are every 5 minutes if you're living apart. Give them time to settle in. They're going to have to reflect. If there's a chance to save the marriage, they're going to have to reflect as much as you. And that doesn't mean you should shut them out of your life. But you know, in a way, you almost have to kind of support them and say, okay, hope you're okay. I'm doing all right. Their curiosity about what you're doing will inevitably lead them to try and probe and maybe even kind of wind you up to get a response. But you need to keep your distance, but not shut them out. So I hope that summary of dealing with a very difficult separation. There's a lot of other things that I talk about that I've dealt with in my many years of dealing with separations and divorce or pre-divorce situations. But remember this, that, your marriage, you may think it's worth fighting for. And if it is, and if there's a chance, you really owe it to yourself to do it. Okay, it's a big investment of your time, of your love, your emotions, of your bodies, of parenting. It's a lot. And if there is a chance, then why not have a go? There may come a point where it's not worthwhile, but if you approach it in the wrong way, you will never find out whether there was a chance to save that relationship. And here's the most beautiful part of it all, that when you commit to making positive change in you, the relationship can regrow. Okay, it can bloom. It's like putting new seeds in a garden, and you will have a better relationship. And this happens very, very often, that one party decides to stand their ground and work on themselves and be that example and take leadership. And that's what really solves a separation situation. So covered a lot of ground. There are many more videos on the way on this topic. I'm getting a lot of requests about separation, about divorce, how to avert, how to rejuvenate marriages and relationships of all sorts. So I hope that you found this video useful. There will be more content on the channel. Feel free to share this content, and don't forget to thumbs up if you like what I'm talking about. And give any comments or help in the community page and the comments below, or message me. I'll gladly answer them. There's no obligation either way. And if you need help, that's what I'm here to do. So there is always some hope to rebuild your happy relationship. I'm Jim McKenzie. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thanks for watching, and stay happy.